it's Jess. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is going to be my October wrap up. I hope that you've been well. I did miss you all last week. I was away visiting my sister. I usually go once a year there and I just didn't feel like filming a video, to be perfectly honest. I just hung out with my sister and her husband and we did fall activities and I didn't film it, and we played games and we played the new Stardew update and we ate food and it was amazing. I did, however, miss YouTube. I did miss making content and I'm back now to talk to you about the books that I read last month. Last month was a pretty light reading month for me personally. I only completed 4 books, though I am working on Rhythm of War, which is over 1,200 pages. Not as far through that as I thought I would be, but we're making progress. So here we go. Here are the books that I read last month. I wanted to start with Dragon Haven by Robin Hobb. This is book 2 in the Rain Wild Chronicles. I love Robin Hobb. She is one of my favorite authors. I think that she does the best, most masterful character work that I personally have ever encountered. I will never ever stop talking about Robin Hobb. I just think that her books are fantastic. I can't talk about the plot of this book at all without spoiling like the previous series in this world. They are all interconnected series, so I'm just not going to talk about the plot. This series so far has been a book about survival, plot-wise. Obviously outstanding character development so far, and I can see also like where it's heading in the future. There's been a few reckonings, there's been people having to face who they are, there's been people questioning who they are. It's just so good. So plot-wise, this is a book about survival, but thematically I think what makes it interesting is that it's a book about society and how we form communities as humans, and what rules do we place upon ourselves, and why do we place those rules upon ourselves, and questioning if something is the right way to do something simply because that's how it's always been done, or if perhaps, you know, rules were put in place because at the time they were necessary but now they're no longer necessary, or are they maybe still necessary? I just really like how the survival plotline kind of coincides with this more philosophical discussion. In my opinion, all of Robin Hobb's books have philosophical discussions within them. They have moral and ethical themes and discussions. I think that in this series, they are definitely more in your face. They're definitely more transparent. And I do think that that is because the plot is thinner. I don't want to say that like the plot is weaker, because I don't think that that is necessarily true, but like at the end of the day, this plot is like a group of people trying to survive. Like the plot is, I went out and I hunted today. So like that's not exactly like the most riveting plot, but the riveting part of the story comes in. It's like, well, I hunted and I killed this deer. It's my deer. Now what do I do with the food that I have that I can't possibly all consume myself? And how does that contribute to the group, to the community? What are the rules that we should follow, and that sort of thing. So I think because the plot is thinner, I do think the philosophical discussions in this series are definitely more on the forefront. I will say though that even though I am loving this series and I love Robin Hobb and I do highly recommend it, that the thinner plot does affect my enjoyment when I compare it to other Robin Hobb books. Unfortunately, for the books that I read, I compare books written by the same author to other books written by that author. When I think about this book compared to some of other Robin Hobb's books, I think enjoyment wise, I am rating this 4 stars, which is also what I rated the first book of this series. Now, I will say that the last couple chapters of this things are kicking off, and I do think that the second half of the series is a quartet. It's 4 books. I think that there will be a much bigger plot. Obviously, we are going to continue the threads that were built, but I think the plot is going to change quite drastically, but I think the themes are probably going to stay the same throughout the entire series. That's what I have to say about Dragon Haven. I'm still loving the series, loving the experience. If you haven't checked out Robin Hobb, I really highly recommend it. She's one of my favorite authors. Next up, I want to talk about Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. This is a brand new fantasy release, and it is a feminist retelling of Macbeth that centers Lady Macbeth as the main character. I do have a vlog where I read this and the next book I'll talk about, and I go a lot more in depth, like 30 minutes of me yapping in depth about this book. But I will just say that I did not like it. It was a disappointment to me, and I gave it 2 stars. The writing style was really what earned this book the 2 stars. I think Ava Reid's prose is quite excellent. It's kind of difficult for me to put into words like why I didn't really like this book. Basically, what it boils down to is that I don't think the book was successful at being a feminist retelling of Macbeth. And I think it is because of the way Ava Reid wrote the character of Lady Macbeth. First of all, in this book, she is 17. In and of itself is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But she feels like quite young, quite wishy-washy at times. I felt like first of all, did not get enough time in Lady Macbeth's head to really connect with her. I didn't feel any sort of connection at all to the character. And I think that if you're doing a book that is really just about one character and it is about them becoming a villain, which is what Lady Macbeth is in the play, like she is not a good guy. I think it's really important that you take the time to build the connection between the reader and the character. And this is why I say it could just be a me problem. I could definitely be the only person that thinks this. Like maybe every single other person felt really, really connected to Lady Macbeth, but I just didn't. I felt that the entire book, Lady Macbeth, instead of planning and having her own motivations, was really just reacting to what was happening around her and was basically just trying to survive. Trying to survive is like a valid point, and she's living in a world where everything is stacked against her and she doesn't have much life experience. I mean, her trying to survive, valid, very important, but at the same time, I don't really feel like she ever moved past that, and I don't really feel like she came into her own as a character and actually was doing anything at all until like the last 30 pages of the book. And even then, I don't even really feel like she came into her own. I feel like other forces pushed her to be in places, and other forces kind of saved her butt. There's nothing wrong with characters helping characters. Like in general, I think that's great. But at the same time, when you have a character that I feel like didn't really have any agency for the entire book, then at the end, when she finally is forced to have agency, to have it be because of other characters, feels like it drastically undermines her having her own agency. And I know I'm being vague about this. I just don't feel like this was successful in what it wanted to accomplish. I'm just really disappointed by this book. If you read this book, I hope you loved it. Like really, really, I do. I hope that I am the only person who disliked this book this year. I hope that it's a massive success. I hope that I am wrong about this. That's just how I feel about it, and I'm sad. and we're gonna move on. Thankfully for that vlog, I also read Immortal Dark by Tigist Girma. This one was a resounding success. I really liked this. This is a debut novel, and it is a dark academia featuring black vampires in this secret society, and it is really great. So again, I do have a vlog where I talk about all my feelings for this. In this book, you're basically following Kidan. Her and her sister are orphans, and their parents were part of this secret society. They know that their parents were part of this secret society, but their parents didn't want them to be a part of the society. When they died, like, their aunt sent them away to live in the regular rest of the world. However, at the start of this book, we find out that Kidan's sister is missing. The one lead that she has is linked to the secret society, and it is linked to the house that her parents were in charge of, which is now vacated because her aunt has passed away. And according to her parents' will, because the aunt was just, I guess, like a caretaker in between, the house is now being left to this vampire who is also the only link that Kidan has, the only clue that could potentially help her get her sister back. And so the powers that be in this secret society, okay, like, back it up for a second, Jessica. So this secret society is like also a school, and basically there are like houses within this school. They are like noble family type houses. So basically each one of these powerful families runs a different house, and they send their kids to go to this school. When I say school, it's really a college. Also, they have vampires, and the vampires basically like pledge their loyalty to a house. They can change houses if they want to, but Kidan's parents have left in their will the house to their only remaining vampire that is left in Kidan's house. And the powers that be in this secret society don't want a vampire to inherit the house. There is like power and magic involved in this. The dean of the school, who is also in charge of one of the houses, basically is like, Kidan, will you come and attend school so that this vampire won't inherit the house? And she doesn't necessarily care about the school, but Kidan is willing to burn down the entire world to get her sister back. Like, I mean that. She is reckless, and she does not care if she dies. So she agrees to go move into this house and attend school and try to find out what happens to her sister. I think Kidan is an amazingly fascinating character. I loved hanging out with her in this book. This is a debut novel, and there were a couple times where there were some holes in the world building or in logic, and I'm not sure yet if they're actually holes. This is going to be a trilogy, so it's possible that I'm just lacking information that will be revealed later that I can't have right now because it'll spoil things, which is fair, but it did feel like there were just like kind of holes in the logic of this book. There were points where I was just sitting there and I was like, okay, but why? That did bring me out of the book a little bit, because I'm like, I just don't get why this is set up this way. I don't get why this is the system. I also think that a lot of readers don't care as much about world building as I do. And so I think that the things that took me out of the story probably won't bug like the majority of readers of this book. But I will say one thing that might bug you about this book is Kidan can at times be a really frustrating main character. I think she is fascinating. I love the combination of how smart she is with also like how ruthless she is and how little regard she has for her own safety. And here's the thing, like, that's not good, but it's so entertaining in a book. However, there are definitely times where Kidan did things where she was acting against her own interest in a way where I was like, you are literally like hurting your chances of Finding Your Sister, because she's so ruthless and she has so little regard for herself that sometimes it is to an extreme level. And I don't want to get into why. Like, there are reasons. There is a bunch of different trauma that Kidan has been through in her life, and it has led her to just not care about her own life. And that is something that is like actually discussed in the book, and it is part of her character development, and I appreciated it. But if you are one of those readers who just personally does not like frustrating main characters, then I do think that you might have a bad time in this book. I really enjoyed it. Did I want to shake her at times? Yes, absolutely. But I think she is fascinating, and I think she's well written, and I cannot wait to pre-order book 2 in the series. I think it's great. I gave this overall 4 stars. If you want to know more in-depth thoughts, then check out the vlog. And then the last book that I read last month, well, the last book I finished, is Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. This is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, and to be honest, like, no one really needs me to promote this book. Everyone knows what this is about. This is a series where you follow Viv the Orc, and she is a mercenary. In book 1, she is now retired and opens up a coffee shop in this town where people don't know what coffee is. Really, this is a series that is pure coziness and wholesomeness and happiness. This is the prequel, and to be honest, I'm not actually sure how many years before Legends and Lattes this book takes place, but in this one, Viv is headstrong and young and a little tiny bit reckless in trying to prove herself to the mercenary crew that she has just joined, and as a result, she is injured, and the crew kind of dump her in this small little beach town, and they're like, hey, recover, rest, heal yourself, and we'll be back when we finish this mission to collect you. And Viv is like, well, now what? And this is a book about her discovering this town and making some friends there and hanging out primarily in a bookshop and discovering that she actually really enjoys reading. I'm gonna say something that's actually a little bit controversial. I think that this is better than Legends and Lattes. I can already see the improvements in Travis Baldree's writing. This is just a better written book. Now, I want to make it clear, Legends and Lattes is very well written. I'm not criticizing the writing quality of that book. I'm just saying that I can already see that he has improved as an author, which is a good thing. I did also want to say that I think you can read these books in whatever order you want, but I will say that, like, there is a little epilogue, and that epilogue will not make any sense to you if you haven't read Legends and Lattes. I don't think it'll really dim your enjoyment of Bookshops and Bone Dust, but like, the epilogue just won't make any sense. I just really, really loved this one. I liked the coastal city, and I liked how much time we got to spend in it. I think in Legends and Lattes, we're basically just in the city that Viv opens her coffee shop, and to be honest, we don't really get much of what like the city life is actually like. In this one, Viv does a lot more of exploring the coastal city and talking to people around her. You get a better feel of the layout of the land and what it's like to exist within this small town. I just like the characters in this one better. I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel about it. And it's not to say any slams on the characters in Legends and Lattes. I love those characters too. I just personally preferred the ones in this one. This one was just as cozy, just as wholesome. I just really liked this. I will say that, like, I didn't really care about the romance of this one. First of all, I think that the fact that Viv has like basically a summer fling in this book, I've heard people say that it's hard for them to get invested in a romance if they know it's not like the character's end game, and that's not like my issue with it. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't have any issues with it. I just didn't care about it. I actually like the idea that Viv has a summer fling in this. I think a lot of times we as readers are so caught up in the happily ever after, and don't get me wrong, I love a happily ever after, but I think we get so caught up in that we forget that most of the time people are not permanent in our lives. And I think that is okay. You can love people and you can care about them and they can still be temporary in your life. That does not make a relationship any less important. It does not diminish a relationship for me just because people move in and out of your life. So I kind of like the idea that she has this summer fling. I just don't really know that Travis Baldree is great at writing romance. I said what I said. It could just simply be the amount of page time devoted to it. And honestly, I don't necessarily think that there should be more page time devoted to it. I really love this book. I gave it 4 stars, which is the same as what I gave Legends and Lattes. I highly recommend it. There you have it. Those are the books that I finished in the month of October. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and let me know what your favorite read from last month was. I'd love to hear from you. I hope that you stay safe. I hope that you stay warm, and I'll see you in another video soon. Goodbye.